would just like to talk to you, cover a few things, take your questions and answers at any point in time. I can see the chat window open. You guys can type something to chat window. I'll see it right away. And at any point in time, as long as it doesn't interrupt the flow, I'm happy to take that and segue. So this is interactive. There's no big slides and so on and so forth. So we really start with this entire focus. Everybody talks about social media and the amount of money we must spend on social media and how many likes do you have. And you have 1 lakh likes and I have 10 lakh likes. He has 2 million likes. And the cost per like is 5 rupees, it's 3 rupees and so on and so forth, right? The interesting thing I really wanted to put up as a topic out here and really talk to you is that today, the winners are the people who have good business strategy, good product strategy, and the losers are the ones who have to have a good social media strategy. What do we mean by that? Let's start really with the basics, right? One, there's been a very interesting change in the nature of business. I've been now, I'm an old fart. I've been working since I was 17, so I've been over 30 years in this business. But about 20 years ago, sometime last century, when you look at businesses, let's say you took the car business, or you took the pharmaceutical business, or you took construction equipment, any kind of business, right? Let's take the car business. You'd see, Toyota would have a 21% market share, and Volkswagen Group would have a 20% market share, and GM would have 17%, and Ford would have 16%. So the market shares would kind of decline across the leaders in any sector. Similarly, if you take pharmaceuticals, you have Pfizer and Sanofi and so on and so forth, declining in market share that way. You look at watches, you look at most of the goods in the industrial sector. When you talk about the industrial economy, that's how market shares tend to be, and where, you believe competition keeps those market shares and the prices close to each other and so on and so forth. Right? And that's been kind of the way historically things have been. So if you run a number 10 pharmaceutical company in India, you're probably brilliant. And if you run a number 10 pharmaceutical company worldwide, you're probably on the Forbes 400 list, right? But when you go from the goods economy and the industrial economy to the information economy that we're in, when you look at the companies that have come up in the information age in the last 5-10 years, it really owns, I think, 80-90% of the search market worldwide. If I ask you which is the second largest pure search engine, you have to think hard, because maybe it's Bing, which has maybe a 5-7% market share globally. YouTube owns the video search engine business. You'll have to think very hard when I say who's the number 2, because YouTube has 85-90% of that business. WhatsApp is a leader in mobile chat, and you'll have to work very hard to figure out who's the number 2. eBay is a leader in marketplaces, and you'll have to work very hard to find out who's the number 2. Amazon is 7-8 times bigger than anybody else, right? You keep going in the new economy businesses, you find that instead of 20%, 19%, 18%, 17%, 16%, the market shares go 85%, 8.5%, and 0.85%. So it kind of declines really precipitously. In effect, it's the opposite of competition that's happening. While you have competition happening in the industrial era companies, what you have in the information era companies is you have sheer dominance happening. So in search, Google is the dominant era, right? You can think of it as a monopoly, and Facebook is a monopoly in social networking. Twitter has a monopoly in microblogging, and that's true of so many other companies. But more interestingly, this is just not in the information sector companies. Instead of cars, where there's a big fight, if you take electric cars and maybe luxury electric cars, one company, Tesla, has 100% dominance. Instead of Coke and Pepsi, you take new era drinks like energy drinks. Red Bull has one, extraordinary dominance where it's larger than Coke, Pepsi, and the number 3 combined, right? Take Zara in clothing. $21 billion, and Calvin Klein does $2 billion. And out of the $2 billion, Calvin Klein spends $500 million in advertising, and Zara spends zero on advertising. So there's something very interesting happening out here. The first real thing that I think that is happening is to say that we're going from an era of competition to an era of monopolies. And what that means is that where you're competing, whatever business you're in, if you're in a competitive business, it's bad. You should get away and try to build a monopoly business, right? So the first thing is really to say, you have the opportunity to get 80-85% market share. Redbus has that in bus ticketing business. Carvale has that in the car portal business. My dentist has that in the dentist chain business. You can actually go and get that 80-90% dominant market share. That's the first one. So what this means is, if you're setting out to be a number 2 or a number 3 or a number 4, don't bother. And that's really the first thing, where you could set up a number 10 pharmaceutical company and be very rich. Today, you can't even set up a number 2 search engine and be very rich. You can't even set up a number 2 social network and be very rich. You can't even set up a number 2 e-commerce site and be very rich. So essentially, the nature of business has turned to a point where it's gone from competition to winner take all. This is good news for those who are starting out in business, because you have a chance to be that absolute incredible monopoly winner. And this is bad news for the incumbent. This is bad news if you're a number 3 or a number 4 and you don't know how to get ahead. So I don't know where you are, but certainly there's a way to get out of this. So that's really the first point I wanted to make. The second point I wanted to make, which actually hinted at through businesses that businesses. What's interesting is that each of these businesses has spent close to zero on advertising. The traditional way of building brands, if you go with David Arthur and Philip Kotler, is that spend. And, so a Coke and a Pepsi would compare by saying, oh, I spent 500 crores and he spent 400 crores. And large agencies would come back and say, you must have a share of spend. He is outspending you. You must have a share of voice. Your voice has to be greater than his voice. Now, all of these are 20th century metrics which are nonsense. They are not really important in the new world, right? We've seen that in India itself. The WeChat spent 100 crores in India in an effort to become the leading chat business in India. And it was wiped out kind of by WhatsApp, which spent zero. A Hike is trying to do that, is raise a lot of money to spend on advertising, but you go there, there's nobody on there, right? So you'll see this again and again, where the person with less money will beat the person with more money. Of course, you'll have this question about, advertising on e-commerce and Flipkart and all of that advertising, and I'll come to that. And my belief again is that those who advertise and spend the most are the fastest. And I'm sorry, I'm not the guy who agrees with the consensus on this, but that's really the way the new world operates. So, like I said, the first principle is you can achieve dominance and aim for dominance because there is no number 2. It's a winner-take-all game. And the second principle is the means to achieve dominance is usually a zero ad spend. So this really now should put you in saying, okay, so A, I can achieve dominance, and B, I can do that without having a lot of money. Oh, absolutely yes. So what is the way to achieve this dominance? So if you look at these companies, whether it's a Zara, or a Redbus, or a Carvale, or a Red Bull, or a Google or Facebook or Twitter, you know all of these brands, right? How did they achieve dominance? And they achieved dominance essentially through this entire point called word of mouth. They built a product, they built an offering that is so remark-worthy that people talked about it to each other. And that's how they managed to get, you never saw an ad for Google before you used Google. You never saw an ad for Zara to make you go into a store. You never saw an ad for Red Bull to make you pick up the drink. You never saw an ad for Twitter. Somebody told you about it. And interestingly, this is the way the world used to work 200 years ago, in the pre-industrial revolution times. And this is the way the world's coming back to work now, which is really word of mouth. Well, word of mouth is not easy, it's very difficult. So the question is, how did these companies manage word of mouth? And what is it that you can do? And what's kind of sort of, at the heart of all of this word of mouth is? So very interestingly, again, one of the interesting tests you can do is Interbrand just released a list of the world's most valued brands. And what you really find that's interesting is that, an Apple and a Google are there higher than a Coca-Cola. And even though Coke's ad spending is in billions of dollars and Google's ad spending, I don't even know, maybe zero, right? So essentially the biggest brands are built today by word of mouth as opposed to ad spend. Now, this word of mouth, how does it come from? It comes from a very straightforward place. It comes from building a remark-worthy offering, a remark-worthy product. The shortcut is to believe that this word of mouth comes from great social media strategy and buying lots of likes and buying lots of ads on Facebook. But that's not true. At the core of it, the reason that Google became number 1 is it built a better product. It built a product that delighted its customers, and those customers got so happy that they told each other, just go on Google and find it. Somebody told you to sign up to WhatsApp because They said, you have to be on this group. So WhatsApp figured out that they had to make groups work, and they would make groups work very simply and very well. In fact, often very strangely, even in places where the net doesn't work, or you're not able to get enough bandwidth, your WhatsApp messages are able to go through on the most minimal of bandwidths, right? And you will find that again and again, that in each of these cases, what they've done is they've had a great product strategy, but they've not had a great social strategy. Even Apple, a brand that many of you know that I don't buy, right? But I admire them from a distance. And Apple is interesting in the fact that they don't have a Twitter ID, they don't have a Twitter account, they don't have a Facebook page. Because Apple understands that its business is to create products that generate their own word of mouth. And then people can use this to talk about Apple on social media, right? That's so different from this thinking where, Facebook or a Twitter, it must give a lot of money, and then we will go and get you likes, and we will not tell you who they are, and you have to keep paying us so that we can allow you to reach your own audience. And you will find that whether it's the digital Vidya at one end, or whether it's an Apple at the other, or a Zara at the other end, the secret is really to build something that's worth talking about. I understand 500 plus of you have registered for this conference. I'm humbled. Thank you. I mean, and Kapil tells me that's a bit of a record, and that's great. But all of you came because somebody heard of this, somebody got an email, somebody read about it on Twitter or Facebook or whatever else it is, and none of that was paid promotions. It just message came to you. You were interested and you got in, maybe somebody else told you, go log in and see what's being said. So the third point really is that it's about a great product strategy. How do you build this incredible kick-ass product that can really become something that people talk about? Yeah. So what does this really mean? What this means is, if you really have a lot of money to spend on advertising, I would much rather say, go instead and put it in the product. And put it not just in the technology of the product, but in understanding what will make that product great. I'll give you two or three examples out here. Okay? Everybody was building messengers that did everything, that talked up to every other network and so on and so forth. And WhatsApp said, you know what? The future is going to be mobile. And all we're going to do is build a messenger that works from mobile phone to mobile. While everybody else said, okay, mobile to desktop, desktop to mobile, mobile to tablet, tablet to desktop, and so on and so forth. All that WhatsApp said is, I want one reliable service that works from phone to phone. And that's all they built. So while their competition has 50,000 more features, WhatsApp has the fewest features. But it has a feature that is most delightful to its customers, which is extraordinary reliability on exactly the one thing. It does one thing and it does it brilliantly. That's what it does. And that's what got it to dominance. And that's what got it to $21 billion of value that it was bought for. And like the guy who founded WhatsApp said, forget marketing budget. I don't even have a marketing person in the company. All we did was try to build a product that did one thing and did one thing very well. Can you do that? And that's really a challenge to you, which is, can you engineer your product to figure out if your product can you have this awesome product strategy where you say, hey, my product can now fly because there's something so incredible and that it can fly from mouth to mouth. Then there's the second option, and the second option is like a halfway house, and maybe I'll talk about the case of Zara. And what's interesting about Zara is that they've been selling now for quite some time. They're not a new company. They again have $22 billion in sales. So they're the world's largest apparel brand. And they figured out the issue is not about advertising. The point was they said, we can get people into a store if you build a store. You should have figured out. Now, everybody else thinks that to get people to buy, you need like skinny models in exotic locations, draped over the covers of Vogue magazine or Cosmo magazine, looking suitably sophisticated and stylish, and then you go and buy the product. But Zara said, actually, I don't need any of that. I know people, if I build a store, people will walk in. They said the problem is not about getting people to walk in. The problem is getting people to buy after they walk in, because they identified a different problem. They said, when a woman walks into the store, she looks at the product and says, I like this. Maybe I'll buy this the next time I come here. I like this. It's interesting. Maybe 2 months later, maybe for that wedding in November, I'll come by and pick it up, right? So they figured the bigger problem is actually to increase the conversion rate and not so much to actually drive people into the store. They said, we just put the store in a good place, people will come. So how did they now try to solve this problem? They didn't try to solve the problem by saying, buy now and we'll give you 1,000 rupees off, because they said, that is going to devalue the brand. They did it in a really different way. So essentially what they did was something really evil or really clever, whatever you want to call it. They changed the inventories in the store every 2 weeks. So here's what happens. So a woman comes into a store, she likes a dress and says, I'll come by next month and buy it. She comes by next month. And guess what? The dress is not there. So she gets really angry. She sees something else and thinks, I'll come back in 2 weeks and pick it up. And she comes back and guess what? It's not there again. She gets even angrier. The third time she comes, she says, I'm going to buy it right now. Right? Which is why you will see the conversion rate in Zara stores is multiple times the conversion rate in any other stores. So because what they did was they solved this problem. Everybody in the fashion business has this theory that says some collection is a fall collection, whatever else is, right? And we've always wondered, like, what the hell is a winter and a summer and collection? In Bombay, for example, where I live, there's only one season. Or maybe there's 2 seasons. There's a season called the rainy season, there's a season called the non-rainy season, right? So, and nobody builds fashion collections for the rainy season and the non-rainy season. What these guys did was said, forget about these. What if we build 26 seasons? And we change the product 26 times during the year. And they've done it fantastically. So they've engineered their entire supply chain so that from the point that a design is finished on a designer's sheet to the point that the product reaches a shelf is 2 weeks. Imagine that. That's really what's called fast fashion. And they've changed the world by basically not just giving women extraordinary choice, but making them buy that choice at that point. So in fact, several of our companies, we're trying the same idea of fast fashion, which is don't postpone the purchase, right? Just make sure you expire the product. You create artificial scarcity if you want. Expire the product if you have to, because otherwise people will always find a reason to postpone the purchase. And not just that, so hence you have women telling each other, I must go to this, you must go to this, you must go to this, not just because if you don't do that, you miss out what's on what you want to buy, if you've already seen something, but every time you go, there's something different to see. So they've really figured out, using innovation, different way to practice this entire problem. Okay? And to create that buzz. That buzz is really what we're talking about. We create remark worthiness. Now, even if you now come, how did Red Bull solve this problem? So Red Bull's really interesting. Red Bull, for example, is not even a brand that was created in Europe. It was a brand that was created in Thailand by a local entrepreneur who's now a billionaire. And this Austrian guy flew down there for a holiday, saw this energy drink, and then said, okay, look, I like this brand. Give me the license to this brand outside of Thailand. They did it. Right? So this guy then cleared up the product a little. And again, amazing insight. Energy drink aimed at youth. Now, what's the conventional thinking? The conventional thinking, the MNC thinking is, all right, energy must be used by athletes. So we must talk to athletes. So Lucozade and Gatorade and everybody else talks to athletes. And you have various Olympic champions who are evangelists for these energy drinks. But these guys at Insight said, youth, athletics, nonsense. How many youth are really interested in athletics? Nobody is. So forget athletics. So then there's point saying, okay, I want to sell the energy drink, and who do I sell it to? And then came back, and when does this youth need energy? And they came back and said, well, the youth needs energy exactly at one time. And that is when they're partying or they're dancing, when they're on the dance floor. Imagine how refreshingly different the thinking is from saying you need to have that energy to run athletic races that you're not going to run the race. But everybody likes the idea of going and dancing. So they said, here's our single-minded effort. Our effort is to go to people at clubs and pubs and raves and EDM shows and techno shows and say, dude, if you dance, if you want to party, and if you run out of energy, you will have something. And that's really what you're going to do. Because you have something with Red Bull, you can dance for longer, you can party for longer. And their entire position was around this idea of Red Bull gives you wings, which is basically about you can party harder and party longer. Well, the Lucozade, and also the distribution followed so. While Lucozade was available in shops, Red Bull made the effort to go to bars and pubs, train the bartenders, train the waiters, and so you went to a pub. Would you like water Red Bull, right? And somebody said, oh, that's interesting. Come back and bartender would say, now, to see that you can dance for longer. And that began the word of mouth where people saying, man, I did Red Bull so I can dance for longer. And from that, it became an extraordinary company. And now, to the point, they've really now grown to a point where they say, okay, Red Bull is about adrenaline. It adds energy to your body. It adds energy to your system. And they've kind of said Red Bull equals adrenaline, equals excitement. So now they've come to a point where they said, okay, let's invest. So while they spend on marketing, they don't really spend on advertising. But the thinking is also different. But everybody else pays money to put a logo on a race car. They buy the race car. They build the race car. And every race car is called... Kapil, there's some voice I'm hearing, but I'm not sure where that's coming from.
That's what I'm also thinking. Everybody else is muted except you and me, and I'm at a place where there could possibly be no noise.
So if you and there's no voice at my place also. There's dead silence. It's all right. So I hope you guys can all hear us, and if there's a problem, please tell me. I'm happy to repeat the point. So Red Bull again, now they've come to a point where they say, we understand our job is to be remark-worthy, and the way we want to be remark-worthy is we want to be remark-worthy in the realm of excitement, energy, and adrenaline. So what do? So they buy the race car, and every other race car is called a McLaren, Mercedes, or the Honda, but their race car is called the Red Bull. So you'll see, it's a fight between Red Bull and Mercedes on the Formula One track. Not between the Honda and the Mercedes, or the Renault and the Mercedes. So that's really interesting. The other thing is they do these stunts. So they sent Felix Baumgartner into space, and they created lots of hype about it. And actually, TV channels paid them to air, so 50 TV channels in 40 countries carried that feed live of Felix Baumgartner falling from space, skydiving from space. And, all it was actually an ad for Red Bull, but you never saw it. You just saw the brand very discreetly. Plus, they had other brands that came on and co-sponsored it. So they spent about $10-15 million, and they got $300 million worth of publicity out of that. So that's a 20-to-1 return, not counting the cash they earned back. Essentially, the cost of it was earned back, but then they said that rather than me using this medium to put an ad and pay the medium to carry the ad, let me do something so noiseworthy that the mediums come and carry us for free. Right? Politicians have known this all along. You say something remark-worthy, you get into the news. Film stars and film starlets have known this from all along. Malika Sherawat has built her entire career based on remark-worthiness, right? And she's trained by one of the better people. Somebody used to work for me at Channel V and has to run this. You know that, when you're remark-worthy, people will come and talk about you. You don't need an ad budget. So there's enough out there to figure out that you need to be remark-worthy. So coming on further and further, I want to talk a little more about this, right? So the first thing to really understand is your marketing IQ, and I keep saying this, and many people get very angry. Your marketing IQ is inversely proportional to your marketing budget. So the less the money you have, the smarter you need to be. The more the money you have, the dumber you are, or the dumber you need to be, right? Or the dumber you can be. So I think that's really pretty interesting. The other thing is that I asked Kapil to put something out saying, where are you in the organization? The interesting thing about this is that there's too much vested interest in most marketing companies in India today because, it's normally believed that the guy with a bigger marketing budget is a bigger hero. But I really believe the guy with a bigger marketing budget has a lower IQ. Instead of saying, I have only a 20 crore budget and he has a 200 crore budget, he's a big man. It should be the other way around. I have a 20 crore budget. I'm smart. That poor fellow is so dumb he needs a 200 crore budget. So we need to change that thinking to make that happen. But it's very difficult for this to happen because there are so many industries that are dependent on you spending a lot of money. The television industry desperately needs you to spend money. So they'll keep coming to you and giving you reasons why you need to spend money. And sure, there's, Flipkart will spend 100 crores and somebody else will spend 50 crores and somebody else will spend 20 crores and so on and so forth. But you will find that the brands that survive and the brands that end up winning in the end are the brands that never needed to spend that money. As long as you do something. So, for example, I would believe to win in the e-commerce business, today it's not about spending because you're never going to be able to win by spending. In fact, the more you're already running on such low margins. Like I said, if you're in a competitive business where there's competition, the profits go off and the companies collapse. And where there's monopoly, you'll dominate. So you have to create a monopoly. So to create a monopoly, you have to figure out what are you selling. If you want to create an e-com company that sells everything, you're going to die. But if you create an e-com company that sells one thing and sells one thing really, really, really well compared to everybody else, you can be the monopoly in that sector. Right? So don't aim for competition, aim for monopoly because you cannot outspend the competition because everybody will get money to spend and everybody will go out. When everybody spends and everybody gives discounts, what happens is the profits disappear. That means that entire sector collapses. That's not what you want to have happen. You want to try to build a monopoly dominance somewhere. Now, for this to happen, a lot of media will hate to say this. Television will not like to say this, and print will not like to say this because their business depends on getting full-page ads from all these .com companies, or full-page ads from, a Coke and a Pepsi, and big sponsorships and all of that to happen. Because the more you spend on sponsorship, you keep that kind of dying industry. Well, we know very clearly. When was the last time that any of your opinions were changed by Pepsi sponsoring the IPL or Coke sponsoring anybody. So nothing was changed because of any of that, right? Nothing was changed by any of these ads. So the ads are nice, they're entertaining, but it never really did anything. You went out and bought what your friend told you to anyway. So the secret here is, how do you get this entire word of mouth network happening and enough people talking about it? Another great example of this is something everybody talked about lately, which is the ice bucket challenge. You've heard of it, many people have taken it. That was really interesting. So this is an unknown disease called ALS and they came up with this entire idea saying, ALS feels like pins and needles on your skin. How can we have people experience what ALS is about? They said, well, if you dump yourself in ice, you'll feel that. They said, okay, how can we create this entire thing where you dump yourself in ice as a challenge for charity and donate money? And people did that, and they raised $70 million in a month. $70 million, right? It's not a joke. And by spending zero, right? So these are things where, again, admittedly, the majority of the companies may or may not be able to do this. But why do you want to be the majority? You want to be the minority that is smarter? And that's where your opportunity lies to be able to put a product or an option where your product is remark worthy, and you don't need to have this social media strategy as long as you have an extraordinary offering. As long as you have a great product strategy or a great product offering, you don't need to sit back and say, okay, which audience do I buy on Facebook? What do I buy on Twitter? Do I do a sponsored tweet? And I need to do this in SEO and all of that stuff, right? So while some stuff is stuff you have to do at a fundamental level, please understand all those strategies are essentially loser strategies. 2-3 years ago, it was great to be on Facebook because Facebook got you virality. Then if you had 1,000 fans, your brand, 84% visibility was there. In the sense, you put up a message to 1,000 fans, 840 of them would see it. Today, the organic visibility has come down to 0.6%, which means for 1,000 fans, you put it up, and if you're a brand, 6 people will see it. That's it, right? The other 994 are not going to see it unless you go and pay Facebook or whatever else to be able to push it in front of them. So there are companies, this entire business is becoming antiviral. And when we understand that Facebook virality is going to go from 84% to 0.6% to zero, we've been told it's going to go to zero, which essentially means Facebook is going to become like Yahoo. You might as well just buy an ad and run impressions on it because there's really not going to be any great virality that's going to be happening out there, right? So you can either think like the mass and say, oh, I've got to spend money, if Coke is spending so much, I have to be Pepsi and outspend them, and Pepsi is spending so much, I have to be whatever, and you have all these metrics which try to justify spending because there are spend-based metrics. And all I would urge you to do is, instead of looking at spend-based metrics, why don't you look at earning-based metrics? Isn't that more important? Isn't outcome more important than input? Isn't output more important than input? Why are you measuring input? Why not measure output? The thing is, not just the entire television industry or the print industry are dependent on not letting you know any of this. But the entire advertising industry also doesn't want you to know this because the advertising industry exists on those commissions from media. Even though they say, no, we're a fee-based agency, all agencies take 10% commissions. In fact, in digital, they take 20, 25, 30% commissions. You don't know about it. It's taken back from the publisher under the table. You don't know about it, but it's being taken. So hence, I'll tell you a really funny story. So we had a pitch for Redbus, and last week, we're giving a recommendation of Redbus. So it's okay. And we went in, so recommendation, there was no Google and there was no Facebook. And finally we asked why. They said, yeah, tum apne aap kar lo. And we said, no, why are you not recommending Google and Facebook as part of your media plan? They very clearly said, well, Google and Facebook are transparent, but our commission lig gaya tha. All the other guys, Google, Satabanta and Rediff and India Times, we simply, we'll put the money out there and you won't know what commission we've gotten because you can't log in and see anything. Right? So, essentially, the fact that you're going to be recommended media where the agency makes a commission, not where it makes a difference to you. So, remember the word agent. Agency is an agent, and the agent is the agent of the media because that's where they're getting their commission from. It's an agency commission. It's not an agent of yours. So you must really understand that. So most media buyers are in the business of trying to not make you the dominant leader, make you smaller, not bigger. At the same time, most creative shops are also in the same business. They want to get lots of production value. So what does that mean? So if you go and say, I want to do something for YouTube, cost me about a lakh or 2,000 or 10,000 or 50,000. Say, no, you have to do TV because same thing. With the same production quality, if you do for TV, I can charge 1 crore for it. When I do it on YouTube, I can only charge like 1 lakh for it. So I want to make more money, I'm going to spend 1 crore doing that. So when you work with an agency, you figure out that these are 2 revenue models, either production-based model or commission-based model you have to work on. And both of them are loser models. The right model is something else. Maybe it's success-based. Maybe it's something else based, right? But it's really not based on any one of these 2 metrics. if you do want to use an external vendor, right? I'm not recommending anybody, and so on and so forth, right? So how does this start? I think because there's so much of vested interest, a marketing guy, if you say, look, you have 500 crores, if you want to win, you should spend 50 crores and not 600, they get very nervous, right? So they're not really happy because they're very, very wary of giving it up. Now that's an opportunity. Either you're the marketing guy, or if you're the marketing guy with 1/10 the budget of the other guy, you can overturn the other guy. But to do that, remember, you need to be able to overturn and change the product. That means that you have to take this up to the CEO. Once upon a time, the interesting thing about digital, and Kapil and others will understand, is 10 years ago you started one junior Mundu, who was who was given some 1% of the budget, said, "Kuch digital mein kar lo to." And he came up with manager. Then it was a digital manager, then marketing manager. Then now VP marketing look at digital. But now really you want to make a difference, it has to go to the CEO and the board. The board and the CEO have to understand because the product has to change at a fundamental level to become remark worthy if you really want to win this business, right? And that's really one of the key things I wanted to tell you out here. We're at the 40-minute mark. I can talk more, or I can take questions. I think I've been monopolizing the talking, so I've had 80% of market share in the talk of the amount of time spent out here. What I would love to do is I can talk some more, but I would love to have questions or abuses or galis or whatever it is that you guys have for us. Kapil, maybe you can moderate or send some.
Yeah, so I've been actually reading a lot of questions, and they're not really looking like a questions. They're more like a comments. And I think there are a lot of people who wants to have an open conversation with you. So rather than, I state them as a question and we have a deliberation on it, it would be good, guys, if anyone of you want to have an open conversation of anything that's been discussed, just press the hand raise button. I'm just putting all the hands down right now, and I'll unmute you and we can have an open conversation. So by the time you do that, one question from my side, Mahesh. First of all, I really second your thoughts on, the spend that goes in the digital space and the kind of ROI it generates. We have done that evaluation internally a lot of time, and ultimately, whenever we have evaluated the fully loaded cost of customer acquisition, the paid way of customer acquisition has never worked for us, and that's been in the last 14 years of all the business that I am involved in. The problem is that, at times you feel, okay, the word of mouth is the best thing. That's something that's working for us. You have done the evaluation. But then in the desperation of to scale up, you just feel trapped. You feel like what to do. And you end up actually spending money on various channels. So do you have some guidelines on, for a company like, for example, at our size, and you want to scale up, you have the desperations, the product is good, but you just don't feel that word of mouth is spreading enough to give you the kind of volume you really want. What to do at that time? Yeah.
So I think, Kapil, the answer that I would suggest to your question is look back at your product and figure out why is the appeal of your product not scaling, right? The worst way to scale is through advertising. Advertising is never a good way to scale. It basically means the minute you put your advertising, it means you put up the white flag and say, I surrender. So maybe there's something, maybe you want to scale. I don't know what your objectives are. I haven't even talked with you about your business, but maybe your objectives are to get more of these webinars happening in India. So what's stopping that from happening? Maybe you don't have a schedule that's simply put up a year in advance, and you create a bunch of people who are signing up for the schedule, so you know that you've already set it up. Maybe you want to scale to some place outside of India, and you want to get, so then you have to sit back and say, how do I get content that is interesting to people outside of India? And you should have idiots like me, or maybe you should have somebody else, or you should have content that is interesting to those people out there, so people out there can talk about this. So the answer to your question is in your product itself or in your offering itself. You have to constantly upgrade and tweak and upgrade and tweak and upgrade your product. In fact, one of the interesting things is that your product is always in beta. And Gmail was in beta for 11 years and 400 million customers before it actually said, okay, we're not a beta product anymore. They became a market leader and a dominant market leader in email before they declared that they're not a beta product. So I think that's really the point. So I would urge you to look at yourself and don't sit and try to advertise to figure out what the solution is. The other thing is, and some of you may be wondering, what are those things that are happening with the screens behind me? So we're really sitting in actually the social nerve center, what we call the social media room, what we call brand center out here at the office, where actually we look at brands and conversations in real time and figure out, okay, how can I jump onto something in real time? So, for example, whatever is happening out there, for example, like Ranbakshi is being talked about right now, I can't even make out, Finantech is being talked about right now. BPL is, so what is it that I can figure out in terms of being why are these being talked about, and how can I figure out if I can join that conversation, jump onto the conversation, and grow my brand using whatever is being talked about. So I really do believe, for example, in fact, one of the symbols we use internally is that we have this pattern like an air traffic control. You can imagine what air traffic control at a busy airport looks like. Lots of screens and people with high tension, and you come at 8 in the morning, you work till like 8 at night, and you go home, and then the minute you get up, somebody else sits at your desk and works, manage the aircraft planning and taking off for the next shift. I believe marketing is going to become like that. You're going to see trends in real time. You're going to work in shifts, and we're already running 2 shifts for several of the clients where we are figuring out what's being talked about and how can we, intervene in these cases. So a lot of it is to be able to say, okay, how can I listen to the conversation? How can I hear what's being said? How can I intervene and interject? So marketing is going to become a business where you're going to work in shifts. You're going to work globally. And once you're able to do that, you can figure out that, if you want to grow globally, well, Kapil, you might have to figure out that you can't work in an Indian time zone from, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. India time. If you want to work, you have to work European hours, you have to work American hours. You have to have somebody working these hours to be able to tap into those conversations happening at those times. So right now it's 3:45 in India, which basically means it's 3 in the morning in the US. The US are logged in here. But they must be really dedicated people to log in at 3 in the morning to be able to see a conversation happening from India. So you might need a time shift to be able to go globally. You can sit right out here in India, in Delhi, or wherever your office is, but that's a change you can make. Kapil?
Great, thanks a lot. So now I'm muting some of the people. Andy, you have your hand raised. What you want to discuss? You can just have a discussion now. Andy?
Yeah, basically I want to check, is this true for SaaS startups selling to enterprises, example like Workday, Zendesk, Atlassian? I know Atlassian spends very less on sales and marketing, but things like that.
Yeah, I think it's pretty true. I mean, if I look at Salesforce, if I look at, all of these, Workday, if I look at large successful B2B companies, even some of the B2B companies that we ourselves have funded from the fund, we don't think it's any different. I mean, the key thing is to understand that whether it's B2B or B2C, there's people. All you need to do is, I'll give you an example. So at Pinstorm, we're a B2B firm. Our clients are other businesses, right? We don't have a PR agency. We've done no advertising. I have no MyBar, right? So I came to India cold. I was doing something else, and I helped start this 10 years ago. And it's one of the couple of businesses I run. But every single one of our clients in this company has come by business word of mouth. If I look at Digital Vidya, it's also a B2B company. A lot of the business is about, doing trainings at corporates, and their business is entirely a B2B business. It's grown by word of mouth. And we're both significant sized businesses. Our revenues are in the crores of rupees, not in the hundreds of crores of rupees, but in the crores or 10 crore plus. So whether it is India or it is not in India. In fact, even more so, I mean, how else would you reach B2B? You think you can reach B2B by buying a page in Times of India? No, you can't, right? What you need to do is exactly the same thing. Find a product or an offering which has extraordinary remarkworthiness. And once you talk to somebody out there, ask them for a recommendation. I keep saying this, you want to have 100 customers. What you need to have is 50 customers who each recommend you to another customer. And to have 50 customers, you need 25 customers who recommend you to one more. And to have 25 customers, you need 12. To have 12, you need to have 6. To have 6, you need to have 3. To have 3, you need to have 2. To have 2, you need to have 1. And the first question is, can you get one customer? And most people say yes. Well, I said, well, get that one customer, delight the hell out of that customer, and ask the customer for a referral or recommendation. And soon enough, you will find there are enough mechanisms, whether it's using LinkedIn or whether it's using Facebook or using Zing or whatever your tool is, that the word of mouth can be accelerated. You can't create fake word of mouth, but you can certainly use these tools to help shape this conversation coming towards you and to help build your business.
Can you just take an example like expense management company or LMS company and say, just like 2-3 steps they can do to get traction?
Okay, so let's talk about, for example, an expense management company. Now, the key thing is to figure out, let's say, are you based in India or where are you based?
US.
Okay, so you're based in the US. Now, so the key people who are going to be really interested in this are the CFO and the CEO, right? Because they really need to right? So there's no point, for example, if you're in India and you're trying to sell an expense management business, a product, by somebody at head office makes a decision. So find who the decision maker is. And essentially what you need to do is to say, okay, fine, let me start with a small but growing client. So so for example, there's a great community of early adopters called other startups. So people like a Facebook or a Google or so on and so forth are very, very happy to talk to young and emerging companies because they're one themselves. So try to get one of these fast-growing companies as your customers, right? Even as an alpha or a beta or whatever else it is. Once you're able to jump, get in there, make one of these guys happy and successful, then go and say, you know what, Google uses my product. And people say, wow. So even a Ford Motor will then respect the fact that Google has used it and bring you in. Though it might be hard for you to crack Ford Motor directly. So the point again is to be able to say who are the early guys, and if you read, Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm and others, you figure out who are the guys I need to knock down first. There are 9 pins or 10 pins in the bowling alley, which is the first pin you need to knock down, which you knock down 2 more, which you knock down 3 more, which you knock down 4 more, to be able to get all your 10 pins knocked down. And it's not as difficult as people think. It just requires hot and focused action, as opposed to saying, man, I need to buy $100 billion. Because what is happening if you buy $100 billion worth of advertising in the Wall Street Journal Economist magazine? Some guy's going to pick up the phone and say, well, give me some references and referrals. So it's going to come down to references, and word of mouth anyway. So might as well focus on that.
Yeah, that's it. That's all my question.
Okay, thanks. I hope that was some sort of an answer.
No. It was very good, very good. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
And Zara is really evil. Zara example is really good.
No, it's a wonderfully evil company, man.
Yeah, I say evil in a good way.
Yeah, so do I. And, I can see the ladies talk about it as though like, oh my God, if I don't have it, I'm out of business and, whatever else it is, I have to go to Zara. And the Zara sale is legendary. I mean, people line up for days for the Zara sale. And no advertising. No 100 crores of advertising to say that there's a Zara sale going to happen. They just say they're going to have a sale and then lines went around the block. People take days off from work to go to Zara sale.
Hi, Mahesh. This is Naveen. And what a refreshing, thought process that you've kicked up. And I run a strategy and a corporate strategy and people strategy consulting firm in Delhi. So, when you say there's, product, I was wondering, if it's a product, it makes sense. But, if I'm in a business like, generic business like it's consulting, how do you create that, in your words and in what I call as kick-ass product to create that word of mouth?
Sure. For me, I'm sorry, maybe I should have clarified before. By product, I mean offering. It might be a product. It might be So I think it's pretty much the same way. Much like McKinsey has built its place, as the world's most respected firm, without doing any advertising. All they've done is, taken the idea of saying, how can I be seen as a thought leader in this particular process or in this particular business that I'm in? Mm-hmm. So let's say you're in some consulting business. Maybe I couldn't hear, Naveen, exactly which business you're in.
What was I offer corporate strategy and people strategy.
Okay, so let's say that corporate strategy and people strategy. Let's go specifically the more difficult part, which is people strategy, right?
Okay.
Because it's more difficult to differentiate in corporate strategy. Because corporate strategy, there's a smaller bunch of competition, it's easier to differentiate. And people strategy, there's everybody from Naukri to all the HR companies to ABC to say, we'll do your people strategy.
True.
So the thing is, you want people to say, how do I call Naveen for people strategy? And so Naveen has to be known. Your company has to be known for being innovative or thoughtful or different or whatever, remarkworthy in terms of people strategy. So maybe you should be giving webinars like this. Maybe you should come up with a report once or twice a year to talk about something really interesting when it comes to people, which is, for example, today I was hearing the news that Infosys' attrition rate has gone up from 19% to 21%. So maybe you should come up with a report saying Infosys attrition increases and that's a good thing. When you do that, you come back and say, okay, why is that a good thing? Because you say, okay, fine, they're weeding out the non-performers, blah, blah, blah. So when you start getting talked about, when you start getting seen, people start saying, oh, okay, these guys know something in people strategy. They're a thought leader. Maybe I should follow them. Maybe I should talk to them. Right? Yeah. So it's really about saying, how is it that you can create remarkworthiness so that people can think of you as the thought leader in that niche that you're in. It's not difficult. All you got to do is figure out how can you be newsworthy.
True. Makes sense, but must acknowledge, Mahesh, what a wonderful and exciting way you put in, the kind of cases that you illustrated. Amazing, amazing. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Naveen. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Nitin, I'm unmuting you.
Yeah. Hi, I'm speaking from Gurgaon. And Mahesh, what a wonderful piece of advice you've given. Where I'm launching my now, in the segment I'm in, I'm really fearful of professional investors investing in one of my competitor companies because what I've seen of late is the moment professional investors jump onto companies, they start, offering, huge discounts to grab the market and drive up the valuations, and that becomes the only end game. How do we increase the subscriber base by offering more and more discounts to get higher valuations and then get an exit strategy from the company? In this scenario, how does a startup ramp up, even though it has got a fantastic product, but when it is competing against professional investors who are out there to kill the market, how do you survive?
I think it's a good question. I think it's also good that you recognize this. For whatever it's worth, I do believe that this madness of investing in marketing for e-com is going to go away. Much like the madness that was there 10 years ago for investing in eyeballs was there. I don't know if you even know that if you're around when there were brands like India.com and Reddit.com and everybody was advertising HomeTrade.com. HomeTrade, I remember, spent 100 plus crores in the year 2000 in India. And they didn't even have a product. They spent 100 crores on advertising, they didn't have a product. Imagine that, right? And every one of those companies is dead or gone, and nearly dead or nearly gone, right? The world will right itself, will correct itself. So I do believe sooner than later, this madness to build valuation by spending on advertising somebody was saying, man, that's an extraordinary feat to make 600 crores of sales in one day. And my answer was, how is that extraordinary? I mean, if I bought a product for 100 rupees and sell it for 50 rupees, it's not an act of genius. It's an act of stupidity. And say that, okay, by selling a 100 rupee product at 50 rupees, I made 600 crores. It doesn't say that you're smart. It says like, man, you're like dumb, right? It's quite the opposite. When you sell a 100 rupee product at 125 rupees and then make 600 crores, then my hat's off to you, right? So my entire point is sanity will come. Right now we're in the midst of this bubble. This bubble will deflate. There's certainly a story, I don't know. Also, valuations will also come down. I mean, valuation market can't support crazy valuations. I can't support crazy valuations, right? It will come down. And the more conservative guy, where I sit back and say, if somebody says, I need, the big joke I hear is, "मेरे को 15 crore का brand बनाना है." And this entire thing with brand बनाना है कि brand थोड़ी बनता है advertising से थोड़ी brand बनता है. The standard thing I keep coming in entrepreneurs from Gurgaon keep telling me, I don't mean to be racist anyway, कि brand बनाना है भैया. ब्रांड बनाने के लिए हम 15 करोड़ चाहिए या 50 करोड़ चाहिए ब्रांड बनाने के लिए. No, you don't make brand by spending 50 crores on advertising. You can spend 100 crores getting people to come to your shop one day, and all of them can be pissed off saying, I never got the product I wanted. So what brand have you banawed by spending 100 crores? So my point is this valuation, my belief that this valuation madness will go away, and maybe if you can talk again at the 100th digital vidya, whatever else it is, if things go, we'll figure out if the bubble is burst. Now, in the meanwhile, how do you cope? I think the key thing is to really sit back and say, what is it that you have that is your sustainable, defensible, competitive advantage? What is it that you can do? That even if your competitors come and give this damn great product away for free, that you can still say, okay, no, hold on. And maybe it is as simple as saying, you know what, I'm going to get 24 months of cash to keep this company alive. And that's what I'm going to do. And all I'm going to do is, there's like alpha and beta fighting a war overhead. Just cover yourself, let them kill each other, and then stand up again. Maybe all you have to do is survive, because eventually there will be a need for your product. But in this entire madness, all I tell people is, for example, this current e-com dhamaka madness, whatever it is, I tell people it's a great time to buy product, right? Because many of these companies are not in the business of selling the product; they're in the business of selling themselves. So, it's okay, they'll sell themselves. Company बेचना है, हमें क्या करना? If somebody is selling you a product at some ridiculous price, buy it. The faster you buy it, the faster the company will die. Right? So, all you have to do is put your head down, make sure you survive, and you will come out, because this nonsense will not carry on for long. It's a bubble. It'll deflate. Much like there was a eyeballs bubble 10 years ago, and there are various bubbles at various points of time. But saneness and sensibility will come back into the market. I have been through enough nonsense in these 48, 49 years that I've lived to know.
Yeah. So I hope my brand survives this madness.
Well, for your brand to survive the madness, your customers have to survive it with you. You have to figure out what is it that you can give your customers. See, people worry about competition. I say, don't worry about competition. Worry about your customers. Keep your customers. As long as you keep your customers, why do you care about competition? Don't focus on the competition. Just focus on your customers and say, what is going to keep my customer with me? And the competition will go away. It doesn't matter. Why are you focusing on the competition? Yeah, don't worry about it. Just keep your eyes on the customer, on your customers. Keep them, hold them, figure out what is going to make them delightfully, extraordinarily happy with you, that they stay with you.
All right. Thanks.
All the best.
Great. Thanks, Nitin. So I'm unmuting Santosh. Santosh, what's your question?
Thanks, Santosh.
Hey, hi Mahesh, great to hear you. So my question is related to our current sales strategy. So we have a B2B data management product, and when we demo it to the customers, it is mainly meant for the large customers where the data management becomes difficult when it comes to marketing. So when we demo it to most of our customers, the comment is it's a phenomenal product, great, we want to go ahead with it. During the evaluations, they come back and say, now give us, a couple of competing products and your value proposition against them. There are products which are substitutes, but we don't really find a competing product. Now, it's, something similar to what you said, we're trying to build a niche. But the problem that we are hitting is when we are trying to sell, people ask for competition, they want to refer, they want to go through the procurement cycle before they buy our product or our subscription. How do you tackle that? So you have a niche, but you still need to show competition. That's my problem.
Yeah, and that's an age-old problem, right? I mean, it's something that many of a couple of my industry companies have also faced, because think about it, in the procurement process, see, why is the guy doing it? He's doing it to cover his ass, right? Because he wants to be able to go to his management and say that, I'm not doing any special favor to Santosh's company. I'm actually just going through a proper procurement process, right? Because I've got 3 vendors, 3 quotations, and I picked the right quotation. So in some cases, you have to be as clever as anything else. One, you can actually invent the competition. So put 2 other websites and put up 2 products out there, which may be built by you, but which are more expensive. And, it can be 3 products that come from 3 vendors. All 3 of them are actually your products, or your friend's products, or your wife's products, or your husband's, or whatever, your spouse's products. That's a pretty straightforward way. The other is to actually find some random product somewhere in the world which is much more expensive than yours and put it up there and let them do it. The third thing is to be able to say that, if even that fails, then you have to go higher than the procurement guy. You have to go to somebody up to management, because essentially the procurement guy is doing this to cover his ass. So you have to go to somebody. The only way, he's safe is if his superior tells him, okay, you don't need to get competing products out here, right? So get the buy-in from the guy above him. So either, like I said, you create your own competing products, get some random competing product from Africa, South America, whatever else it is, or the US, which is 10 times more expensive than yours, or go to this person's superior, because he's doing his job. He doesn't have the power to convince his superior that he's not showing any favoritism towards you. He wants to say that, no, I've checked out 3 companies. And we find that even at Pinstorm all the time. People come and say, boss, I need to get 3 quotes from 3 guys. And I say, boss, only I have this offering. So we kind of tell somebody else, why don't you white label my offering and offer it at a higher price than me, knowing that you're not going to get the business. You've got to do that sometimes, because that's, especially in governments, everybody needs 3 quotations. That's the standard best practice. But the other point of view, the best practice is the worst practice, and maybe you can do that in another session, but anything that is called the best practice is the worst practice. Anyway, so I hope that helps you in some way. Jugaad karna padega.
Sure, thanks.
Thanks.
Great. So next question, Vandana, I have unmuted you. Vandana Chabra, I have unmuted
Hi, Vandana. I can't hear her. Is she there?
Yeah, Vandana.
We'll go to the next one. That's not a problem.
Sure. So let me see if there is anybody else. Yeah. Slowan, I have unmuted you. Slowan, you're there. Yeah.
Can Can you hear me, man?
Yes.
Yes, I can. Hi, what's your name?
Yes. My name is Stuart.
Sorry?
Stuart.
Stuart. Hi, Stuart.
Yes. Hi. It was a very insightful session. It's nice to see somebody advocating not to advertise. It's very rare.
Also, an ex-advertising guy doing that. I mean, I must be out of my mind now.
Well, yeah, very nice. Now, see, I run a fashion brand. It caters to a very niche segment. We do fashion jewelry. And we have a lot of top celebrities wearing it. Now, my question is, when we are catering to a niche audience and we have, say, celebrities wearing it, how do I spread the word that these guys are wearing it? Because once people get to know that celebrities are wearing it, they will buy it. But for that, I would need to advertise, right?
No, I don't think you do. I mean, why can't you just use a picture of, XYZ, and say, whoever it is. And if it's a news picture, you don't even have to get their permission because it's public. It's not an advertising or a post picture. And put it up on Twitter and put it up on fan clubs. So, each of these guys are big fan clubs. If it's Katrina Kaif or Salman or Shah Rukh or who are a celebrity wearing a jewelry, they all have fan clubs that number in the hundreds of thousands. Put it up to the fan clubs on Twitter. Put it up to the fan clubs on their Facebook pages and so on and so forth. And nobody can deny it because it's a news picture of them. And even better, the celebrities actually, I would believe, paid for the product. Most celebrities never pay for the product. I can't imagine Shah Rukh Khan going and saying, yes, I want a Hyundai i10, right? Nonsense, right? So if you actually have a product that's genuinely bought by the celebrity and worn by the celebrity, I mean, or even if it's not, put the picture up, put it among the fans and let them spread it out and let the word spread. And then somebody will come, somebody from Bombay Times, somebody will come and say, I want to do a story on you. And then let them do the story. Become newsworthy. In each of these cases, be news. For example, if a celebrity wore a product in the movie, well, feature a still in the movie and talk about, wear the same stuff that whatever Deepika wore in XYZ movie or Katrina wore in ABC movie or whatever. So you use news pictures, use commonly available Creative Commons stuff, which you don't need to pay any royalty for, and you're fine.
That's exactly actually what we're doing. But what we've realized is our target market or the people who actually buy are not the fans of these people. But when they get to know that this person has worn it, they buy it immediately.
Okay, that's really interesting. So, what else would you know about these fans? How do you find them? What do you know about them? Where can you reach them?
Basically, Facebook targeting. That's where Facebook works. That because I target people who are into online shopping and who have like certain brands or certain categories. So that's the thing. So not every fan of, say, Sonam Kapoor is our fan, but if a person who's actually interested in a product, if they get to know Sonam Kapoor has won a product, she buys it right away.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I didn't know that. So I would then imagine, so first of all, figure out, your audience, and your audience would like to know that there's a product that's actually been bought by Sonam Kapoor or bought by, she used it in Khoobsurat or whatever the hell it is, right? So as long as you can figure out, even if you start with 10 customers, there are 10 prospects of yours, and again, spending money on Facebook targeting is you've got to be really, really sharp to know how to do it really, really well. But the bigger thing is to be able to say something interesting. So maybe now you're not targeting the fans, but you're able to sit back and say, a broader statement which gets retweeted. Can you put this in an interesting way? Can you show the fact that Sonam Kapoor uses your product, but say it in an interesting way that even a non-fan can like it and share it and pass it on, right? So it could be a reference to her father's chest hair, or it could be a reference to how bad she was in Khoobsurat or whatever the hell it is that you want to do. But be remarkable and be different in your communication, right?
How do I reach that non-fan? That's my point. How do I reach that non-fan without advertising?
You start with one, and that one person shares it, goes to 20, and that 20 people share it, goes to 400, and 400 shares to 8,000, and 8,000 share it, and go to 160,000. That's the way it goes, right? It's not going to happen tomorrow, Stuart. It won't happen in a day. But I'll give you a simple example. I mean, I can sell a product. I don't think I'm any celebrity of any sorts, but I've been now on Twitter for 4 or 5 years. I landed up with 70,000 followers, and I landed with 46,000 on Facebook, and suddenly I have more people following me than maybe people read an English magazine in India, which means that now I'm a media vehicle. So my point is, rather than trying to find a third-party media vehicle, what can make you a media vehicle? Can you become a media vehicle where people follow you because there's something interesting you say? Much like for whatever reason you came out to hear me speak. Can a bunch of people come out to hear what you're saying in terms of, can you do a show on YouTube which says, here's what the celebrities are wearing? And I have, you say with your phone, it should cost all of 5 rupees to produce. It's a cost that you drink while producing it, right? But when you put it together, you say, okay, fine, these are the brands actually owned by celebs, and it can even be funny. So this is the brand that Sonam endorses, but actually this is the brand she really pays for and wears, right? This is the brand that Katrina endorses, and this is the brand she really pays off and wears. These are interesting things that you might want to do. Try to be, again, I don't have a pat answer to your question. I'm sorry, I don't have any, I can here. But is there something remarkable enough where it can spread among the people who are likely to be your customers and who don't have to be your the fans of the star? I think the fact that they're wearing it is a great plus, and you found something. Now this is time to mine it and take it further there.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thanks, Rohit. I hope that was useful.
Thanks.
Would love to have somebody from Pinstrong contact me, actually.
Hey, so there's, I think Kapil has sent out something. Just say yes to that.
Yes. Thank you.
Great. So I think I've actually taken up questions from all the people who have raised hands. I've just put down all the hands. If there is anything urgent that you want to have a discussion on and you really can't wait for any further communication, you can just press the hand raise button and I'll immediately unmute you. Great, guys. So, yeah, there are a couple of people.
Just one second, Kapil. If anybody wants to reach me, I'm just mahesh@pinstrong.com. That's my email address, or @MaheshMurthy on Twitter. Just follow me and ping me right back. I usually reply unless I'm asleep or something, right? That's all. It's as simple as that. And look, the one thing I was, this was not a planned session. I didn't have a set of slides and whatever else it is. I'd like to hear feedback, and please ping me on email or on Facebook or on Twitter and tell me how it was. And buy more products from these guys that they do with it. They're good guys, even though they refuse to give me even one share in the company. There's nothing I can do but buy their product.
Great. Thanks a lot. And guys, what we'll do is I've actually recorded this session. So we'll soon send you the recording of this session. We'll do a blog post on it. And if you have any further question, you can just post it as a comment over there as well. You can tweet it to Mahesh directly, or you can post it to comment. I'll make sure that we pass it on to Mahesh and you get a reply to that. Continue to attend our sessions. We'll continue to send you invites, continue to keep troubling you. And looking forward, Mahesh, for you having more such interactive sessions with us. We'll definitely see if we can do it in near future.
The 100th one. Book the 100th one for me.
Sure, done already.
Great day. Thanks, best.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. This was fun for me. I hope it was fun for you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. The session is closed. Thank you.